Welcome to Agile South Coast on July the 14th. We've got two people to talk to us today. We've got Andrew Jones, who's going to be talking to us later about the Agile Listening Project. But first, Josh Tasker talking about battle mapping. So Josh, over to you.
I've decided to do it by a lovely flip chart as opposed to just boring you with PowerPoint, as you've seen in a number of these meetups. So battle mapping is a fantastic way of visualizing the environment that you find yourself in with at work and understand stakeholder allegiances as well as planning your next move. So I'll give you a few minutes just to think to yourself, what is your kind of objective? What is your vision?
Josh, I'll follow along and I'll use the same problem that I came up with yesterday when we practiced this.
Okay.
For people who are not currently working, could you do this same thing for your own development or trajectory?
Yes, so if you were to think of a specific thing that you wanted to do, so for example, for myself, where I'm not working right now, I've had mine as agile coaching. So mine was to understand where I wanted to go with coaching. And I would then instead of using stakeholders and people, which I'll go on to later, which is the primary use for this, I would use it kind of as topics. So for example, I had active listening, looking at kind of one-to-one coaching, team coaching, and I could then kind of map that to a degree. But primarily, it's more focused on kind of the people and the stakeholder relationships where you will see more benefit with this. Okay, I shall move on.
Actually, Josh, it's a great chance to just ask people if there are any questions already.
Of course. Are there any questions? Or is it clear enough?
Will you be uploading the slides somewhere later?
I can take pictures and I'll give them to Stephen to distribute.
If you can upload them directly to Meetup. Yeah.
Cool. So now comes the fun part, which is now that you've got your reference point. So for example, my one is to transform the department into following agile practices and principles. It's now time to draw out an obvious hierarchy within that focused area. So for example, the one that I've got with my department is I have 3 teams, Team 1, Team Viking, and Team A. I have a couple of line managers. I have a couple of senior managers, but I also have some influencers. These are marketing, sales, and a service desk. Now, the reason you kind of map them out this way and the hierarchy is just it makes it clearer to see kind of where kind of people sit and where they appear. If you're in just one team and your focus area is just one team, just do that one team. I'm just using this as kind of a big example. And what I would like you to do is, now that you've got that kind of focus point, draw out the people who are involved. And just simply circles, and you can use a job title, initials, whatever you like.
Josh, would you use people's names? I see that you've got roles here. Would you ever put individuals' names on here?
So the idea behind the battle map, and I should have probably mentioned this beforehand, is this is kind of for you. So if you want to put names, feel free. If you want to use it that way, how I've done it is I've used initials for people when I've worked with a stakeholder who is using this map to kind of visualize kind of where people are and who they are, just for simple use. But just because I didn't have any names for people, I just use roles. But you may find that there is a team over here that you have no idea who they are, but they're in your sphere. You may want to decide to say, oh, there's 3 devs, there's 1 tester, there's 1 designer.
So it's however I mentally think about these people.
Yeah.
If I'm on first name terms, I'll just put their first name. If I just know that they're a project manager, I'll put project manager.
Yeah. Whatever this is your reference point. This is your map, your kind of area that you're going to be looking at.
And it's interesting, a lot of the artifacts that we try and produce in our work, we intend to be big, publicly visible artifacts. But I think what you were saying here is that that's not the intention for this one. This is a thinking tool for me.
Apart from when, and if you're happy to share later on, when we break out into our groups, it will be kind of a conversation of what you've discovered, etc. Or if it's and kind of a brief conversation, you can just keep this to yourself. The idea could be that it's kind of this is your map, this is what you want to see. You don't have to share it. The whole purpose is this is your thinking tool to get your head onto a piece of paper when you're thinking about kind of a particular problem.
Cool.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. In your metaphor of this as a battlefield, and your directions here are to show the hierarchies.
Yes.
It is an assumption, of course. Like not all organizations are like that.
However you want to reference this map, go for it. If you've come up with an idea and it works for you, please share it with me, because I'll be really interested. The reason I use hierarchy is because 9 times out of 10, most people I've spoken to are like, well, I've got a line manager who's being pushed on by a kind of a senior manager and a stakeholder. It just kind of falls into that kind of military metaphor because there is usually a hierarchy within it.
It's often an easy place to start.
Yeah. But adapt it to however you think, whatever visualization helps you use that. Okay, shall I flip over? So, this is the part where the color comes in. Now, I'm going to use a disclaimer here. There are going to be words that I say that you are for the military metaphor and you wouldn't use when you're working in the office. For that reason, if you don't want to use this metaphor, again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, use something else, think of something else, but the principle kind of needs to stay the same. So after you've mapped kind of where those people are and those people within that field, it's now to map their allegiances. Now, what you'll find is that you've got, for example, allies who will be in blue. And the reason they're blue is there's someone who really believes in the kind of vision or the product that you're building, and they're willing to fight for it. They're by your side, and they want to see it succeed. You'll have your supporters in green. They are people who, as suggested, support you, but they're very passive about it. They're not kind of singing from the rooftops that this is fantastic. They're passively agreeing with you. They're on your side, but they're nowhere near as kind of strong as the blues. You'll have your neutrals who quite simply don't really care. They are people that they don't care if you succeed, they don't care if you fail. This could be, for example, with my one, which is kind of rolling out agility in the department. These could be the people that go, it's just another framework, it'll be gone within 18 months, like every other framework. On the flip side, you'll have your enemies. Now, these are people in red, and they are people who are actively trying to sabotage or undermine what you're doing. So for my case with agility, it may be that they say, it's not going to work. My team will never work this way. I don't believe in it. It's always worked the way we've had it, etc., etc. You have your threats who are in orange, and these are the people, again, similar to the supporters. They're against you, but in a passive manner. They may agree with other people saying, yeah, I don't see what the point of this is, but they'll do it passively. And finally, you'll have your unknowns who are in purple. These are people that we have no idea. You have no idea whether they want your vision to succeed. They don't know if they don't care. You don't know if they want you to fail. You have no vision of that at all. Now, what that will look like, as you can see, if it's not washed out, is that now the color's been added. So, for example, I have a senior manager who's purple. I haven't had the conversation with them yet. I have no idea whether they agree with my vision or if they don't. Similarly, I have a senior manager on the other side who's green. He passively supports what I'm doing. He may have been the person who got me involved within that organization, but he's not kind of saying this is the best thing that we should do. He's simply going, no, I agree with what you're doing. I've got a line manager who's blue. He could be the person who's going, yeah, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I absolutely love it. Why have we not worked this way before? I have a line manager who's turning around, who's neutral, is just going, don't care, not interested. And I have a stakeholder in the service desk team who is orange, who may be going, you've disrupted how my teams are working, or the team I work with is working. I can see, I don't really agree with it. And then finally, I have a line manager who's red. And this could be someone who's saying, as I said before, don't agree with it. Why are we doing it? Old way worked the best. I don't want this to go forward. So that's kind of what your map should start looking like, is adding colour to the people around. And that is what I'd like you to do. And I will flip back over so you can have the chart for the lovely people.
I've got two questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're a little bit silly, but I reckon that in this exercise, it's probably more valuable to consider actions rather than words, because I'm guessing that sometimes people will say, oh, yes, I think what you're doing is great, because perhaps they agree with what you're saying, but then when it comes to actually supporting you with actions, they don't do it for whatever reason. So I'm guessing that you have to factor that in as well. Is that correct?
This will be based on your knowledge. This would not be on, oh, so-and-so said this. Like, for the example you've given, they act like an ally. I completely agree with where you're going with this. But in actual fact, really, they're just a supporter. They're kind of like passively like, yeah, I really agree with you. But they don't, as you say, actually do anything on it. It could be we're going to run our daily stand-ups. It's going to be fantastic. And then you go look and the team aren't doing it. That could be a way of supporting. They're passive or even maybe neutral. But yes.
Okay.
Another obvious point from me was that this is allegiance to your aims.
Yeah.
So, obviously there are lots of allegiances to different people. We're simplifying this and we're just saying we're colouring according to the allegiance to our goal for this battle.
So, with mine being the department, my map, back over here, sorry, quickly, these are people who support my vision. These are people who say, I want to be agile in my case. Your case could be that they want that my senior stakeholders actually value what product I'm building. However that is, these people should map against that. That's why, with the caveat of having a specific goal, because say, for example, this line manager, who's blue in my case, absolutely loves the idea of agility, but if I'm working on a different project, he may be completely red. He may think it's awful. But for this case, he's blue.
And this is where we thought we might use shapes if we didn't have 6 different colours of pen.
Again, use shapes. If you want to do blues as triangles and supporters as squares, whatever works for you if you don't have enough colours.
It's a question from Andrea first, and then we'll go to Spencer.
I think Spencer was first, though.
Oh,
go Spencer.
Go, Andrea.
This reminds me of another way that you could alter the map would be to, after you've done that first part, and maybe you have something like this later, but is to draw lines between people who know each other or interact regularly.
Hold it.
Yeah, hold on to that.
Hold on to that.
It's a very good idea.
That is a fantastic idea.
And Spencer, you had a question.
Yeah, so my question was kind of presumably this is something that you would evolve as you learn more as well. So it's not a one-shot deal. Your starting point. So I'm realizing that because I kind of just put somebody blue and then realized that actually they were green and went back and changed it.
Yeah. So something I was going to mention a bit later on, but I'll mention it now, is this battle map is ever changing. This could be your 6-month plan. This could be when we get towards the end of it, you'll see there are certain, for example, tactics or strategies you may want to employ to try and change where people sit within the map. Or you can even use it to kind of go, I need to go discover what, for example, in my case was the senior manager, I need to go and discover, is he with me, or is he kind of actually, no, I don't really care about agility. You can use that, kind of evolve it, and people's colours may change, or more people may get added into the mix. But yes, it is continuously something that you could just keep on a whiteboard or on your phone and just kind of change as you go.
So to build on that question slightly, do you think it's worth versioning it and making a note of why you changed a thing? So you've got some sort of history of how.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
Or not? Yeah,
that's an absolutely fantastic idea. One of the ways that me and one of the stakeholders of Virgin Media did is that at the end of we would do this. We would sit here. I think we sat there for the first session for about 2.5 hours as he recalled kind of where his objectives were going. and where he saw the people within his team and outside of the team who influenced it. And then he turned around and was like, he would just get out his phone, he'd take a picture, and by the end of the next month, I would just say, "Oh, how's it going?" He'd say, "Right," and he'd pull me into the room. He would get it up on his phone, and we'd just simply draw it on a whiteboard really quickly with the people who were there. And he's like, "Right, I've now made a change against this person. I know that this guy actually really gets on with this guy," for example, and then actually kind of shaped his map that way. But yeah, versioning, if you've got on an online tool or pen and paper, yeah, definitely.
Thanks.
All right, so people had a chance to colour in their pictures. Is anyone still drawing? Otherwise, Josh, I guess you're going to do a big reveal.
I flip over. So now I would like you to map the influence. So using arrows with your people, I would now like you to draw arrows showing the kind of influence they have on other individuals. So you may have a one-way influence. So from person to person, this could be your line manager, this could be the developer. He has a one-way level of influence. Similarly, there could be a two-way influence, and you just simply do either way. They have influence on each other. The developer in this case may be like, "Well, actually, I don't think this is the right way," and this person goes, "Yeah, I'll take that on board. I'll see what I can do with that." You may have a strong relationship, which is, it could be one way or two way, which is, this could be the senior manager and the line manager. "I need you to hit these targets. I need you to do this," and it's heavy influence, heavy objective. You may have positive relationships that you know of, which could be, these two could go out for a bit and they really get on and they're really friendly and they work well together. Similarly, you may have people who you know are negative and have a really bad relationship with each other. And I map those as both positive in green and negative in red. And I've done a very simple one here, if you can see it if it's okay. So I have a line manager here. He has loads of one-way relationships with his designers, his testers, and a developer. I have a scrum master who has great relationships either way with other people within the team. I have a tester and a developer who don't get on. That could be that they worked on a project previously, don't get on. I may actually find that I have for example, a data analyst in my team who has a fantastic relationship with my stakeholder. That could be personal. They may kind of, again, as the example goes, go out for a beer on a Friday, or they just have worked together before and they really get on. Now, this is the simple version of it. And in my case, you can see how, as you go through, you could really kind of change and spider diagram. Don't put lines if you don't know the relationship or the influence they have on people. For example, you may not know how a line manager has influence on specific teams or how an individual has a relationship with others. But as you can see in my diagram, I have a lot of positive relationships that I know of. For example, again, the data analyst has a fantastic relationship with the senior manager. I know that the red line manager has an awful relationship with the scrum master. So what you can do with this is start to actually map that influence. And if you haven't started, I would like you to go ahead and draw out your influence.
Sorry, can I ask another question while we're doing that?
Sure.
So I have a persona within my map who is an ally to my idea, who is an influencer of another person who would be termed a supporter, but they're not actually able to turn them into an ally. So they might say they are, but they're not. What color arrow would be appropriate to use there? Because they're trying to influence them to become an ally, but they're not succeeding.
So if that's an influence line that is simply just a kind of work relationship that they just kind of work really well together, etc., I would use a black line. If you know that they've got a strong influence over that person, they can be the arrowhead. For example, if you can see it here, the senior manager has a very strong relationship on this guy. But if it's actually a really positive, just they get on, they maybe see each other after work, or they're really good friends, and you can tell that, use a green arrow. But,
yeah, so Spencer, my instinct would be a green arrow, but a very skinny one, because as you said, it's quite an ineffective influence.
Sadly.
Yeah, if it's just kind of that thin influence, yeah, thin arrow. If for example you revisit this in 2 months' time and actually they've really built on it, you may want to re-thicken the arrow, and then you may even get to the chance to change that person from green to blue. Also, if you're at this level, I also have an arrow that goes between teams just to represent the kind of way that they work. For example, my team 1 have an awful relationship with team A. And I, for example, may not know what that is, but I'm aware that they don't get on. This could be, I don't know, for example, the deployment team versus a digital team, and they constantly have disputes over deploying live websites, for example.
Put that wry smile away, Spencer.
I was resisting making jokes about Python and Ruby, or
you can imagine it, can't you?
I'm loving the flip charts, by the way. Awesome. Very cool.
Thank you. I would like to do this in person because I think it would be a bit much more interactive. I thought kind of going between rooms, bringing people in and out and kind of having a discussion would be a bit too heavy, but kind of getting the point across, hopefully.
Yeah, it's good because when we briefly talked about this before, I think I was a complete cynic and a naysayer, and yeah, I'm immediately seeing the value, so really useful. Thank you.
It's fantastic, thank you. Are there any other clarifications that I can provide anyone? Or we'll happily scribbling away, drawing kind of where people's relationships that you know of.
Oh, Andrew, I'm muted if you were speaking.
Oops, I was just going to say, I knew about something similar to this, and and that was from many years ago, but I never really applied it. And I just, in my last job, I think I could have really used this. I think it would have helped me be a better influencer to have mapped it out and then used it deliberately.
It sounds like it's almost time to throw ourselves into the breakout rooms and talk a little bit about what we've been able to produce. Josh, we'll give people a minute or so more.
Yeah,
let's practice something that Andrew's asked us to use. So Andrew's asked us to use the hands up feature, the responses feature in Zoom. So if you scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom client, you should see a toolbar, and one of those is reactions. So if you're ready to discuss your map, could you go down and click on the reactions and put your hand up, or give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up for I'm ready to chat. Thumbs up from Nigel. Spencer's ready. Oh, I'm ready as well. Let me do a, yep, there you go. It's hard work being facilitator. Now, I have just discovered that I can see the thumbs, and the thumbs disappear after a few seconds. Oh, that's a shame. Oh well. Okay, I'm going to have to use these very carefully. I was expecting the thumbs up to appear on the participants view, but they don't. They only appear in the gallery view. Right.
Hands up might work in the gallery. Hands up might work.
Oh, okay, let's go for a hands up rather than a thumbs up. Hands up, everyone. If you're ready. Oh no, Martin, we need a virtual hand up if you can reach the reaction feature on your... Thank you, that's the one. Right, regardless of whether you think you're ready or not, you only have 1 more minute.
So one other way of counting whether people, like charting whether people are ready in Zoom, is to use the chat feature and get people to just put some sort of mark in there, because that is more permanent.
Yeah, it is kind of cool to see the hands go up and down on the screen. The chat would challenge me to read and keep a tally chart. So yeah, we're going to make it work. Right, okay, and it's a chance to practice all of these features that we find around the edge of the Zoom client. Okay, Josh, do you think we're ready to throw people into the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I think so. Just a caveat, if you don't want to share your map, you don't have to. If it's something that's kind of personal that you want to keep to yourself, feel free to do that. But spend some time just to say, this is what I've got, and I've noticed actually that this person may not get on with this person, etc., etc. So yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah. So Josh, as you said, you don't need to share this. It's a helpful thinking exercise in its own right, but it can also be helpful to talk about it because that could help crystallize your thinking even more. So that's what we can try and do now, as Josh said, if it is safe to share in this public environment. I'm going to create 4 breakout rooms, which means that we should find up to 4 people in each breakout room. They're going to be assigned randomly. So please, when you see the notification that you've got the opportunity to walk in, you have to click the button to go in, and just take a minute to introduce yourself to the other people, and then find a way to take turns for Josh, about two minutes on each map, maybe 1 minute to talk about it, and 3 minutes for each map, let's say. Does that look at the clock?
How long
Starts to push the boundaries. 2 minutes for each map. You're up to a minute to explain it, and then a minute just to clarify with questions. Okay, so breakout rooms are appearing now. The rooms are open.
Takes a minute to get there.
Yeah, but it's not far away.
If I'm not going into a room, should I just click later?
You could, or you could go into a room. It's up to you.
Yeah, why
Just
not?
listen. Just listen. Yeah, I'm going to go into a room as well. So.
Zoom. They're flipping Microsoft Teams.
Oh, the T word.
And it's day 2 of a major project with some very strong characters.
Oh, lovely.
All of whom think they're experts in everything.
Right. Well, Andrew, have you drawn a picture of this?
I have actually.
Are you able to share?
Yeah, I've got to be careful how I share it.
So it says recording, but I don't think the breakout rooms get recorded. But
No. But I'm being I'll be quite coy about showing mine, purely and simply because I have actually taken today's examples.
Okay, well. So Spencer, have you got something you can share?
I have. So that is what I've done so far.
So if you hold that slightly further down, what's the battle?
Right, so I didn't actually annotate what the battle was, but it was, so I guess I could summarize by set and maintain a sensible project direction. Would be generic enough to not give too much away. This is based on is it? Do you need me to keep holding that up, or shall
No, you can put it down. Yeah, please.
Sorry, say that again, Andrew.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool. This is based on a very short engagement that I had, which was not supposed to be a short engagement, but it turned out that there was a person who was invited to the workshop that wasn't actually involved with the project at all, apart from being the owner of the idea, or the originator of the idea, not even the owner of the idea in commercial terms. And I'd been warned that he was slightly difficult. That turned out to be a humongous understatement of the situation. And he threw a major spanner grenade about an hour and a half into day 1 of a 2-day workshop. So yeah, this would have been useful to kind of undertake beforehand, and I will certainly listen for that sort of trigger warning again from people. If they say, oh, they can be a bit tricky, then I shall not take that as a good read of the potential impact that they have. I shall dig into it more. The person that said, oh, they're a bit tricky was trustworthy enough that I naively didn't think that I needed to dig into it any more than that, because I felt his appraisal would be right. And to be honest, he was shocked at what occurred as well. So yeah. Maybe.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because often when people say, oh, they'll be quite tricky, I'm often quite excited by that, because I often in sessions get great value from those people because they've got real insights and passion. But I suppose the clean question would be, what kind of tricky is that? Because then
yes.
there are certain kinds of tricky that you just don't want.
I think, Spencer, when we come on to the Agile listening project things, these are the very things that we have to try and address, the elephant in the room. What I like about this battle mapping, what's this?
Oh, so I just shared my one, but maybe I'll share this to the whole group afterwards. But this was make the Agile South Coast organisation events even better. So just the exercise of thinking about this identified people who come to these events regularly, people who are only coming for a single event, the organisers, the speakers, and the family of the organisers, the family of the speakers, and then other meetup organisers. And it was interesting all by itself just to think about these different personas, actually, to use the word that you used earlier, Spencer, because just the activity of drawing this just helps to bring those a little more forward in my thinking.
How's it with your thinking? Is this to be able to say there are certain people who can influence other parts of the community to join, or is it?
Well, so if you've got people who've come to the very first event, people who perhaps aren't intending to come to another event, our regulars can influence those people to perhaps come back. What we really want are great speakers willing to come and share their good ideas. So we need regular people to influence the speakers and say, yes, this event's worth coming to. We need perhaps the organisers of other meetups to say, oh yeah, Agile South Coast, they're okay. Yeah, I know somebody who goes there. He's a good guy. It'll be worth your time. So, this was just a quick, suitable for public consumption one. And you can see that I think Josh is going to ask us to put tactics and strategies in, or think about possible tactics and possible strategies to help our cause. So I've just put tactics, think about regular meetings between the organisers so that we have the opportunity to be on top of organisation, and perhaps a strategy to be part of the public conversations about Agile South Coast so that we can influence the direction of those conversations. So I think you were just going, somebody was just saying what I found helpful about this tool. And I interrupted that, sorry, but
okay.
For me, what I found helpful was just the activity of thinking about the different personas involved. Okay. And then everything that flows from that was actually obvious.
It's not, you won't be able to see it well enough.
Yeah, we can't read it.
So what I tried to do was, I'm actually doing a piece of work for a government department on which 80% are private contractors that come from 3 different companies, all of whom would like to do the other person's piece of work as well. So you've got Accenture, you've got Camcom, you've got CGI, and then you've got the client, who in this case is the National Crime Agency.
And they drop you into the mix as well.
Well, I'm coming via Camcom and Broadlight, but as you know, I always get put in as the troubleshooter. And the idea was that maybe I could be able to start pulling these 3 teams together to stop the infighting and the egos. And I've sort of just been watching for the first 2 days. And Camcom, for instance, have a project manager who tries to run everything. As far as he's concerned, he is the project manager for everything.
So has this exercise been helpful, or have you already done something similar to this?
What I needed to say was, okay, who can we get to influence him to put him back in the box?
Yeah.
And I've got the person who brought me in is also from Camcom.
2 more minutes. I need you to jump out and tell the others that they're about to have to come back into the big room. Okay. 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh. Hi Ian, hi Nick, you still with us?
Yes, I am. But I'm doing a banking return at the same time as listening to the presentation.
Good stuff. Okay, so everyone will be coming back in about a minute. I'm just going to whiz through the rooms and let them know.
Sure. Thank you.
Leave it for someone else to share, or?
Hey guys, we've just got 1 minute until we head back into the big room. Is that okay?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
expertise to also have us draw maps similar to this as well. And actually map out the physical space of like where people were located.
I think Stephen is saying 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Can't hear you, but okay. We assume we know.
It's been
as a way, especially with the people perhaps you don't know quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's to really identify them and then try and decide, or if it's clearly obvious that there's kind of working against me, or that we're not aligned to the same thing, why is that? And then that makes it really easy to go, right, I need to understand my world, but I need to figure out you straight away, because if you're coming up on my radar really quickly as not aligned, and I still don't know the lie of the land, that's a big problem. But if everyone's coming up as neutral or I can't tell, it's probably a good sign that they might not be your champions, but they're not going to be there to block or hinder you.
Sorry to break stuff out. You've got a few seconds to finish this, and then we're back in the big room. Okay, just a warning. So catch you.
How to get people to actually listen. It's not happening anymore.
Oh dear. Oh no. There's an organization that focuses just on listening and bringing listening to the world. I don't know if you've heard about it. I can get you the link to that.
That sounds like a great conversation to have after Andrew's Agile listening.
Yes.
Well, hey, so do we have Josh back yet? So the room that Josh was in, they're just waiting until the last second to come out. Hi again, Emma. I didn't know that you were Mo. I thought Mo was somebody different.
Yes, sorry.
And I regret not doing a really quick icebreaker at the beginning where we introduced each other, so I'll remember for next time. Right. Hey, Josh, back to you. I dropped in and out of a few rooms and it sounded like some great conversations happening. But Josh, back to you. Don't forget to unmute yourself. I've done it for you. Right, you're unmuted.
Thank you. No, I got trapped in the breakout room. Everyone left. And I was like, come on, you could do it. But it just kind of kept me there. So I hope you had some really good conversations. So now, from this conversation, you may have now thought, oh, maybe if I talk to this person, I do that. So what you can do is you can think about the tactics and strategic plays. Now, what I mean by this is in the short term, your tactics, what can you do? And in your long term, your strategic plays, what can you do? So, for example, with a tactic, is there anything I can do to support this part? So over here, I have a neutral product owner and a green scrum master. And to me, that would be, well, surely they should be really into the agile kind of development and et cetera, et cetera. But actually, I may find out that these guys were just simply rolled into this. The product owner could go, I was a project manager and suddenly I've just been told I'm a product owner, and they may not be engaged. So then I may then say, right, what actions can I take from this? And then kind of draw on to kind of, for example, what can you see? What can you do? And kind of build on that. Another example would be, for example, what's happening with my tester. He's red over here, and he's got a lot of influence from other people. I may find that, for example, he's the only tester in that team, and the Agile has been an absolute nightmare. He had a team of testers around him, and suddenly he's been thrown in an Agile team on his own with 3 developers. So that's kind of where you can see the tactics. How can you then go forward and go, I'm going to sit down and understand where that's going. Then you have your strategies, your long-term plays. So, for example, the line manager who's red up here, I have put that as a strategy because what can I do to change his thought process on agility? Is it that I need to then influence a different person? So this line manager, do I need to then figure out where his senior manager, where his opinion on agility is, and kind of play the long game with him, changing the influence of other people around him? Now, I would say when you've got people like this, you may want to immediately go, you know what, I'm going to isolate him. I've got people below him who are going to be kind of, who wants to be agile. I've got people around him who want to be agile. I'll simply isolate him and kind of restrict what he can do. What you should first do is actually have the conversation. You know, understand his needs, understand kind of where he's coming from. A good tool to do that was something that Spencer actually mentioned to me, which was kind of empathy mapping. If you can put your kind of where you are or where he is and put yourself in his shoes and understand kind of what's he seeing, what's he thinking. For example, he may go, all I'm seeing is all my developers and testers really upset because they've been thrown around out of their teams. Understand where he's coming from and then come at him to see what he can do and influence that. And then another final long-term long-term strategy, is that I need to find out why my two teams don't like each other. Could there be some deep-seated kind of issues there? Are there kind of projects that they've all worked closely together on that they really just don't like each other? You need to find the information as you go through this map and as you kind of update it kind of either monthly or whenever. When the people start changing in this kind of map, you may go, actually, I now know why these people don't get on. It's because of this reason, or this team doesn't work because of they've got conflicting interest. So what I would like you to now do is, using the kind of tactics of short term and strategic your long term, look at your map and go, what's your next move? What are you going to do towards your map? And go, actually, what's that change you can make?
So on our maps, we need to think of some short-term, some perhaps tactical things that we can do, and perhaps some longer-term strategic things.
So a tactical example could be, I'm going to go take this guy for a coffee to leverage his network, and I want to know kind of how he is. That could be a simple tactical thing. Just understand the context. Short, long-term, as I said, kind of what can you string along the way to get to kind of where you want to be with that kind of area of influence.
And we probably have about 3 minutes left before we all take a really short break and make sure that we're comfortable for Andrew. And I think we'll leave just 5 minutes for Josh, you to ask people what they've learned from this.
Sure. I like to kind of highlight where kind of areas that I'm going to do stuff. They just kind of will make it clearer for you in the long run. Just highlight where you're going. You know, I want to go here. Kind of think of it like as it is a battle map. Kind of go, I'm going to do this here. I'm going to put a flag here. Try and be a bit interactive with it.
Yeah, so we've got a great question on the text chat from Neil. I'll bring that out just at the end.
Sorry, can I ask a question quickly?
Go on, Spencer. Yep.
Question/observation. So what I'm seeing from this map, or from this example, is that anybody who's red or orange or purple, I guess, are essentially candidates for discovery, for finding out more. So if you take nothing else, I don't mean you would take nothing else from it, but if you were to just glance superficially at the colours, you can tell how much you don't know and who you need to go and speak to find out more, to be able to actually kind of start to inform some of the stuff. So it just as a really kind of glance-worthy research point, it seems really powerful.
The best thing about it as well is, as you do that discovery phase, you may find that someone who you didn't think of has a really good relationship with one of them, and that could be your buy-in to kind of understand why. And you can then ask them, kind of either introduce you to them, or kind of even if they've heard something, they can just say, oh yeah, I just know that he's under a lot of stress from, for example, if I take my line manager, he's under a heavier stress from the senior manager. He just keeps, whipping in with kind of quarterly targets. Kind of slowly you can like build up that network to then go, how can I solve your problem? And if you go to him with that kind of, how do I solve your problem with kind of needing to hit these targets, and how can I explain it to you? It's a much better kind of conversation than as the kind of initial, I just need to isolate him kind of thing.
Yeah, that's very rarely
a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's a great point, that you're using the language of user experience there, but why not? The tools are to help us understand people better, and that's exactly what we need to do. We've got uncertainty. Let's go and understand and learn, resolve that uncertainty. So, okay, with that, people have had a chance to scribble down their short-term and longer-term plans. Josh, how do you want to end this session?
I can take kind of what did people take from this? Did they find it useful? Is it something that you would use? And also questions.
Yeah, so let's do that first of all before questions. Is there anyone who has learned something about this, about their situation because they've done this exercise? It would be great to either put that in the text chat and that I'll read that out, or just open up your microphone and say. So hands up from Andrew. So it's I guess a yes to I've learned something through going through the exercise.
I must admit, I wish I'd learned this yesterday. Because I think what I might have done was take the org charts of the three groups plus the client and actually map them all out. And in fact, there could have been some short-term tactical stuff I could have done this very day. Coming to the strategic things maybe over the next couple of days as I got to know people better. But certainly, it's such a complex, difficult structure that I'm in, with everybody vying for each other's work, it would have been very useful.
It's that parallel org chart, isn't it? The hierarchy of influence. Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah.
So we've got a comment from Nigel that's helped identify grey areas that I need to work on finding out more. So that's echoing and reinforcing what Spencer said. Pedro, not much new information, but it's freed your mind to be able to think about the situation. That's a great way of just getting more clarity on what you've learned in your work and not having to hold them.
Better, it gets it out of your head.
Yeah,
it helps you kind of pull it out and put it on paper.
Useful. Is there anyone who does this already?
That'd be good.
Well, yes, I have done in the past. I think I was in the breakout room talking with Joshua. I worked on a very large government project where we had a team working here. We didn't use battle planning as such, but very similar technique, which is rooted in PR planning. We had 4,000 stakeholders. So it was a massive map produced.
It would be a complicated flip chart.
It was a huge map. We had 11 stakeholder managers on the project as a separate team. So they work with different sectors. So police was one, local authorities was another, and so on. And it really worked. It was amazing to see the resistances being addressed and neutralised through the process, including some very, very vocal opponents of a government policy.
And it gets that out into the open.
Which is where my on the ethics comes in, because this can be quite manipulative at the end of the day if you're not careful.
So let me just pick up on that. So Spencer, when we first said that we would like to talk about battle mapping, you winced because the metaphor was just so horrible. We're going in to collaborate. We're not going into war. And then you're talking about the ethics of this. That it could be construed as a manipulative activity. And I guess Josh, I guess Spencer, you already said that actually beyond the metaphor, it's a very helpful activity.
Yeah, I mean, I've come around to it for sure, and I think it's probably just it's really relationship mapping, which would demilitarize the entire thing for me. And I know, I mean, the thing I was resisting saying earlier was the thing that I've learned is that I should try and not have such visceral reactions to metaphors that I don't like.
It doesn't work. Take away the military metaphor. Use it however you see it. I use it just simply because it's a kind of, it looks like a strategic map of kind of going, I need to target this area, I need to do that. This person needs to do, this person's got this relationship. I would just simply say, with great power comes great responsibility. If you use it in a kind of, I'm going to manipulate areas, then it's just a visual tool. If you use it for good in a way of going, I'm going to discover why this person's so against this motion. I know that I need to talk to this person to understand where they're coming from. It's all how you then use this information to then go forward with it.
Yeah, so I see how it can be construed as a quite Machiavellian or manipulative activity. But if you flip it around, is it almost negligent to your work if you don't do this? Because we're all we're all working towards a goal that we believe in. So if we're not doing this, we're missing a trick. We're not doing what we should be doing.
Honestly, I think if you're
We
ethical
argue
enough
that
to
the
question
red
the
people,
ethics. Sorry.
red people in there could be doing the similar thing back to you. So possibility.
But Josh's point is actually first thing here is a conversation.
Yes, always start with that.
But yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. With great insights, with great mapping. So we have managed to fit our 45-minute session inside the 1 hour time box that we allowed for it. Are there any other questions, just quickly? And people are quite welcome to step away. We'll start Andrew's session in 5 minutes, but we'll fill that 5 minutes for the people who don't need to walk away with questions. Oh, hold on. First of all, Josh, thank you very much. So we always have a round of applause. So yeah, so genuine clapping. There you go. And I'll right. Just time for some questions.
Either I've explained it really well.
Yeah, I was just going to say I picked up on something in chat about NetMap. Someone's put fits better for me. What's the very quick difference between NetMap and BattleMap?
I have no idea. I've never heard of NetMap. I'm really interested to find out.
Andrea, you're muted. Oh no. Well, you're not muted, but I can't hear you.
Nope, no sound.
But it's in. Okay, so Andrea has just shared a link in the chat.
Have a look at that.
So there's technology that is not Zoom. Something to do with your computer doesn't want you to speak to us. Okay, any other questions?
I have one. So, Josh, have you ever used this to not attempt or not go to the battle? So you can see that, oh, there are so many enemies, I might not win this. So instead of this, I might attempt another vision, another goal.
I used it in a situation where the top area was very kind of, I thought they would be more kind of green, but actually they were more kind of just black, if not kind of an orange and a few reds. So actually what I kind of pivoted on that was, okay, if I can't go through this part, what can I do here to make it so that there's a cause and effect? If the teams work really well, will that change the opinion of the people above? So I think you can use it to pivot it. But if everything else was red within, I would say either you need to kind of, if it was around kind of agile transformation, I'd kind of be going, why am I here? But if it was around a project or a product, it's like, what do I need to do to really show the value here? Or why am I doing this kind of thing? I think, yeah, if it was everything was red, you may want to go, I'll take a step back and think.
That's a point. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, and then we get into the unethical usage of this that Neil alluded to, which is realizing that Josh is working hard towards something that I don't approve of, and I can start battle mapping to sabotage the project. But I think at that point I've just unmasked myself as quite an unethical person. So it's not the tool, it's the user.
People. That's why it's mapping people. It's just people.
Every problem's a people problem. Right.
I think if everything's red on your battle map, maybe the problem is you, and maybe your pizza topping choice is not acceptable. Banana and kiwi do not belong on a pizza.
Yeah, so I can't remember the quote. If everybody you meet in a day is an arsehole, perhaps you're the arsehole. Is that?
Well, similarly, I reckon that it can also be seen as, a tool to explore whether you actually want to keep working on this specific project or company as well, because it might turn out that the actual values or the culture of the company doesn't align with the stuff that you want to do, and there's probably a realization of it's probably time to move on. So yeah.
Maybe I'm in the wrong place, and it's a visualization that prompts that thinking. Right. Okay, so we have 1 minute. Do what you want for 1 minute. Stretch your shoulders, touch your toes. Bye, Spencer. Thank you very much for joining us the first hour. I am recording this, so maybe we'll be able to share Andrew's afterwards, although I haven't yet found a place to store the videos. And Andrew, you've got...
I'm afraid I'll have to pop out as well. So if you manage to put the video somewhere, please let us know. And Joshua, thank you so much. It was really, really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks for those who were with us for the first half, and thanks for everyone who's staying with us. Now, Andrew, are you ready?
Sure am. Okay. Well, thanks for all of you staying on for the second half. It's much appreciated. Right. So tonight I can talk about why we set up the project. It came about after an extremely bad experience I had on a project. I typically get called in to troubleshoot. I get called in when either companies are failing or when companies are going through big business transformations and nothing's happening. And typically, unfortunately, those companies tend to be ones that are all about talking the talk, but not actually walking it. So they talk about Agile, they talk about servant leadership, they talk about a whole load of things, but they never actually train people properly. And so, since this thing, I decided that we need to do something about helping people like these companies, but more importantly, I actually found there's a whole load of people who were mentally stressed out and needed help, needed to have help how to cope with bullies in the workplace and that sort of thing. So the first thing I did was try to understand what makes businesses or projects fail, and I actually did this with a group of people, and they came up with lots of things. They came up with things like no focus on the customer, which, as you can imagine, for somebody who's come from an Agile and a lean background is pretty critical, because I expect the customer to pull everything through the organization. People working in silos, I think every single one of us has come across these sort of issues. Poor leadership, all stakeholders not involved, they're there 1 minute, gone the next, not really enthusiastic, staff feeling undervalued, not listened to. People not walking the talk, they're not moving with the times. Lack of collaboration between everybody, poor understanding of the value chain, who should be involved, lack of transparency. All these things, I guess we have all of us who are involved in project management or indeed with business management have come across. And unfortunately, when all these things come around, we actually see more than 80% of projects failing, not achieving their outcomes. We see bottom lines being hit dramatically. It is actually quite shameful. So what I felt was, if I looked at all those things on the board, there was one thing in common, and that there was poor communication within the organization. And by poor communication, I mean communication from execs down to people below, but not only that, no communication from the people down below up, people not communicating across silos, just poor communication everywhere. And the problem is that everybody's taught how to present. Everybody's told to tell people what to do, express why they're doing something, but actually nobody's taught to listen. And the biggest challenge we face is that in most organizations, you have people that are dominant and like the sound of their own voice, and unfortunately start to dictate how things should go rather than inquire, find out what people think, gather ideas, listen to the experts in the organization. And people start to lose a sense of worth. And if we go back to the Agile principles, and I'll put them all up in one go, you will see that every single one of these requires some level of communication, but two-way communication. So when we're talking about collaboration, we're talking about people sitting together in a team, throwing ideas about understanding things, much as we do when we do our, our mapping, our projects, our ideation meetings. In every part of a project or a program or a transformation, there needs to be significant collaboration from people from different divisions working together. Transparency. Transparency is all about communicating to people what is actually going on. And people need to feel safe to say, see what you're saying, but actually the truth is X, Y, and Z is actually happening. Leadership, well, I could talk about servant leadership for a long, long time. That's not the point of tonight. It's more about agile listening. But if we can get leaders that encourage communication between people, can learn how to empathize with people, can learn how to get people feeling safe to share their ideas, that sort of leadership is absolutely invaluable. Customer focus, I mentioned already. Oh gosh, I was in one business the other day where they've given up actually having customer focus groups for their projects. Instead, what they were doing was doing scoring. So they set a set of questions and they numbered them from 1 to 5. And in scoring 1 to 5, they came up with what they thought the customers wanted. When in fact, if they'd actually put all the customers in a room and got them to tell them about things and ask them deeper questions, they'd get to what the customer really thought. So customer focus is an important thing, understanding, sharing ideas, but once we've shared them, do we understand what they're actually sharing? Do we understand what that other person's saying? Agreement, at the end of the day, we might not all agree on the absolute ultimate, agree on all the ideas, but at the end of the day, we have to have an agreement that we're going to deliver upon what's been chosen as a team. And the last thing is, Agile principles, the Agile principle about having respect for everybody else is so important. So those are the Agile principles, and quite frankly, everyone needs a level of active listening. The problem is active listening is actually a skill. And I want to do a little exercise here that tests how good your listening actually is. And I'm not sure if everybody's got their pieces of paper, but what I'd like you to do, please, is I'm going to read out a sentence. I want you just to listen to it. I don't want you to write anything. Just listen. Wait 5 seconds, and I'll count those 5 seconds quietly. And then what I want you to do is write the sentence word for word. Okay? And when you've done that, can you raise your hand so that Stephen, our friendly leader, can tell us that when everybody's ready? Okay? So, can we just have a trial of thumbs up, please, to say everybody's ready to start? How's it going? Oh, okay. How many people we got left?
I think we've got more than half, and the people who are not putting their thumbs up have just been timed out.
Okay, right here. Okay, here goes for the first sentence. It's an easy one, so I expect everybody to get this one right. Okay, so here it is, the first sentence. Everyone at the game wore a red shirt. You've got 5 seconds to write it, please. Come on, Nigel, you're not writing?
Okay, I wasn't sure if we had to wait 5 seconds before we write it. And then put your hand up. Or some part of your band.
Okay. I should hope everybody has got that word for word right.
So all the people who are going to vote have voted. Everyone at the game.
Okay, let's go with the second one. There's going to be 5 sentences. They're going to get progressively harder, folks. I'm yet to have a team get all 5 right yet. Let's see if we can be impressed. The second sentence. The power went out due to a big storm last Monday morning. Thumbs up, please, when you complete. Come on, Joshua, where are you? Going for a point. Okay, let's check. Please, can everybody be honest? Everybody get that right? And if you have, put your thumb up. Good. Pavel, did you not get it right?
I missed the last. I just said the big storm Monday morning.
Ah, see, okay,
That's
right.
because of the better efficiency of the Polish language, is that?
Right,
Probably.
okay. Third one. And Pavel, this gets more complicated. He usually eats 2 soft tacos and a burrito whenever he goes to Taco Bell. You can see Nigel's finished with a flourish. And so they get progressively harder. Okay. How many of you got it? Word, and I mean word for word, please.
This one I got right.
Oh, well done.
The other one was too easy for me, that's why.
Ah,
I put when instead of whenever.
oh, sorry. Wrong. Okay. How about you, Andrea? Did you get it right? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, well done. Well done. Okay. Fourth one. There's only 2 more left, folks. Fourth one. Here we go. The 4 young children spent the whole afternoon playing on the swings and slides at the local park.
Feels like we're getting slightly closer to why I got divorced, not listening apparently.
Okay.
Oh dear, that's a frightening glimpse into my future.
Has everybody put their thumbs up? Okay, here goes. How many of you got it word for word right, please?
Yes,
And
I
this
did.
Okay.
And
Yeah, me too.
But the word
Nigel,
slides.
Nigel, was this your first time for not getting it right?
It was, yeah. I missed slides.
Oh.
I found myself writing the word slides and I wanted to correct it to just a slide. And then I thought, no, it's a trick.
So I made the mistake of adding the word "the" before before slides.
Yeah, right.
So the swings and the slides.
Oh, I did that as well. I didn't even notice I made that mistake.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, guilty. Well done.
Fraud.
Andrea, you're a real lady. You're teaching Mr. Stephen to be more honest.
I try.
Just want to
Okay.
be successful. That's why.
So, is there anybody left who has done all 5 correct yet? Oh, sorry, all 4 correct yet? Can somebody put their... Oh, Martin has. Well done, Martin. All right, anybody else?
I have.
Anybody else? Oh, Emma's
Emma.
done it.
I'm still going to play for the 5th one, though.
Oh yeah.
Okay, 5th one, guys. Oh, you didn't see that.
Or gals.
Hang on a moment, I'm going to read it out to you and then go back to it. Hang on a moment. Right, here we go. After running 4 miles on the beach, the young woman walked a further mile in order to cool down and then went home. Okay, everybody completed?
Yeah, pretty sure I got this one wrong.
I'm wondering how to spell 4.
Quick correction.
Stephen, giving things away. Right. Okay. You ready, Andrea?
Yes.
Okay, we're good.
Oops. I'm trying to go backwards here. Obviously, not very well. Right, here we are. After running 4 miles on the beach, the young woman walked a further mile in order to cool down and then went home. I'll be absolutely staggered if more than a couple of you got this completely right.
So I missed out the in order, and I spelled 4 as after running for miles. So I misinterpreted 4.
Ah, that's what you're supposed to do, by the way.
Mine ran the last mile.
Oh, right.
In my case, a woman went home to cool down.
Ah. Okay,
Mine,
now, if I remember right, oh, sorry, Martin, you were practically the last one standing, weren't you?
I got the 4. I just failed on one word. Yeah.
Okay. Osiris, how do you get on? No. Okay. Right. Okay. The point of all that, guys, believe it or not, is to demonstrate that despite the fact that you were concentrating extraordinarily hard, none of you managed to get it all right. And I guess that's because we've all been trained to present. We haven't been taught necessary to listen. And one of the things that Agile Listening Project wants to be able to teach is teaching people that listening is a real skill. And it's a skill for not just remembering what I've said, but it's actually learning techniques to clear your mind out so that you do hear everything that is said, that you do then ask questions in a proper way. So for instance, the interesting one was, Stephen said, well, actually, I said she went for a run, F-O-R. In future, he might well ask, Andrew, was it for or F-O-R-U-R? But one of the things I want to do is just quickly go through what the 5 basic elements of active listening is. Obviously, we've developed courses that go far deeper than these, but these are the 5 basic ones. And I don't want to sound like a school teacher in these, but basically, when we listen, a lot of people don't pay attention. They look everywhere. They're considering all the other things like what am I having for lunch, or just now, most really, what am I going to have for dinner? When will Jones shut up so I can go and put my sausages or pizza in the oven? There can be lots of distracting environmental factors. A lot of us at the moment are working from home. A lot of people have children at home. It gets very difficult to listen sometimes. But the other thing that we don't do is, when we're listening to other people, we don't watch their body language. And quite often, by looking at somebody's body language, we can actually tell how enthusiastic they are about the idea they're telling, how unsure they might be of what they're saying, how important it is to them what they're saying. And one of the things that we need to learn is, by paying attention and focusing on the person, we can actually tell a lot more than just what they're saying. We can actually tell what they're saying by how they look. And the other thing is, we had it at a board meeting the other day. I was doing a presentation in front of a board, and there was the HR director and her buddy were having a conversation on the side. One, it put me off. Secondly, it was disrespectful. And secondly, when I came to ask them questions afterwards what they thought, they hadn't got a clue what I was saying. So what we ask people to do is actually prove you're listening. And I know with the Zoom and everything like that at the moment, a lot of people turn their videos off. I am a great proponent, if at all possible, if the bandwidth is wide enough, to encourage everybody to have their cameras on. Because what you really want is for the listener, thank you, Joshua, is to, show their listening, nod occasionally, use some of your other facial expressions, because I can then see whether you're actually listening or not, and whether I'm communicating effectively. The other thing I want the listener to do is actually to adopt some sort of posture that says, I'm listening. If you're in a room, you might lean forward a bit. You can do the same on Zoom. If you lean a bit forward, the person shows you're trying to listen to them. And the other thing is encouraging the speaker by sort of verbal comments like, yes, it helps, I can assure you. Now, one of the things I want people to do is not to interrupt the speaker. The other thing is, I want them to have a mindset that says, I'm not listening to respond, I'm listening to understand. And if you do that, all of a sudden you'll start to try and see more where that person's coming from, because it might not be your point of view. But quite frankly, you're not learning anything if all you're doing is verifying of what you think. If you're expecting that person to tell you what you think, what have you learned? If you listen to other people, they will come up with different ideas, some of which you might want to inquire more about and then validate them against your own ideas. So when you're asking questions, what I want you to do is paraphrase the person or repeat indeed what that person said and then ask them a question. So you're asking questions to clarify points. You're not asking questions to challenge people. What you're trying to do is get a true, full understanding. Yeah, I think this happens all the time. Try not to be judgmental. As I said, try and put to the back of your mind what your beliefs are and try and understand where the speaker is coming from. So allow him to finish. Don't interrupt with arguments. Don't be judgmental. Do your best to listen and understand. And lastly, by saying respond appropriately, I don't mean all mother pie. You might want to challenge what somebody is saying, but there's a way of doing it. And there's a respectful way of doing it. We don't want to attack the speaker. We don't want to put them down. What we want to do is encourage them to actually go further. So if you say, if you do X, what will happen next? In the agenda shift coaching courses, we do a thing called the 15-minute photo, that asks those very questions. We paraphrase or repeat what the person has said about an obstacle, and then ask them, if you did X, what would Y look like? And quite often by doing that, you might need that person to say, actually, my idea wasn't very good. And then you can start saying, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And introduce your ideas into the conversation then. So those are the 5 basics of active listening. What we're doing in the Agile Listening Project is we're taking it a little bit further. We're really saying, first of all, we understand that at the moment, every time I seem to go into a project group, there's a huge amount of stress. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that people don't feel their psychological safety. In other words, they don't feel free to be able to express themselves. And if we employ active listening techniques, we'll start to get people to feel comfortable. We'll get people feeling free to offer ideas, bounce things around. There's no such thing as a silly idea. In fact, some of my silliest ideas have made me the most money, whether it be part of the things I've done with banking the unbanked in Africa, or with some of my crazy ideas for credit risk analysis for credit cards. Some of the silliest ideas have worked out to be some of the best ideas. We want to be able to create dependability amongst us. We want to feel as if we're not feeling at our best today, we can still rely on the other people in the team to support us. And we'll only do that if we actually show each other respect. And by building in active listening, you'll actually start to find that people start to understand about the skills other people might have and say, we can rely on these people in this particular space because they're good at it, and we understand they're good at it. What you'll start to also find is you start to get a sort of informal structure and clarity coming into the organization. By saying people can't interrupt, that people must be able to finish, that gives the conversation structure. But the output you get starts to become much more clear. And that clarity means people aren't making assumptions. And one of the biggest crimes we find at the moment is, in teams, that when people are speaking to each other, they start to assume they understood what the other person meant. They go away, do something, come back, and the person said, well, why did you do that? They haven't questioned properly and said, what do you mean by this? One of the things we want employees to have is a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose. And in so many of the poor performing businesses and poor performing business transformations I've been called into, the lack of purpose and lack of meaning, or even lack of value people feel because they don't feel people are listening to them. And typically I see such high levels of employee turnaround because at the end of the day they just get stressed out, feel nobody's listening to them, there's no solution out of it, so they resign. The current project I'm looking at the moment, out of 50 people, 22 people have left the project and had to onboard another 22. That's how serious it was. The other thing is, if I said meaning and purpose, people want to feel as though they're making an impact on the business. They want to feel as though their contribution meant something. Many years ago, I was brought in to look at Rover Group, and we are talking about many years ago. And there was a problem that, if you remember, with Rover Group cars, in that basically they came off the production line and there was always something wrong with them. The quality was appalling. So one of the tricks we used was we went round to everybody on the shop floor involved in building the car and said, this was the Rover 600, we said, if there was one thing you would improve on this car, what would it be? So many of them came back with ideas, and we implemented them. But what was important was, because people felt they could see their little change in the car, all of a sudden they became proud of that vehicle because felt they'd made a contribution. They'd had an impact. And the level of, the quality levels shot up from an appalling rate. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something like 40% of all cars had some sort of defect. And it dropped down to almost nothing, purely and simply because people started to feel as though they were being listened to and they were making an impact. So that's the impact on the employees. What could be the outcome of the organization if we actually start employing active listening? Well, first of all, if we reintroduce those really good customer focus groups and actually listen to what the customer says and ask them for clarity and develop those conversations, you're going to get a far clearer focus on what the customer actually wants and start to deliver products and services that they need, not what you think they need. Certainly, if we employ it, we'll start to break down those silos so that people from different divisions work together far more closely in a lean fashion or an agile fashion. But the fact that people understand the contribution that each other can make, you start to get a sense of success in the organization. In fact, Stephen and some of the others of you are agenda shift people. One of the first exercises we ever do is, how do we celebrate success? And that starts to bind people together, get people from 3 levels of the organization, a chief exec or senior director, middle manager, and somebody who maybe has just started. Put them in a group, get them talking to each other, come up with ideas. You've already broken down barriers. Not only that, when the youngster walks down the corridor and he sees the senior director is going to go, hi Andrew, how are you keeping? Or hi Paul, or Ginny, or whatever. They're going to start developing an atmosphere within the organization, which is great. And by doing that, we start to create true value in the value chain. We actually start to understand what the important aspects are. We start sharing ideas, etc., etc. And then you start to get effective business transformation. You're only going to bring about change if everybody feels they're contributing to that change. If they don't feel don't have a part in making change, there won't be change, and the business will just fail. And the ultimate outcome is you're all going to have more successful projects. We talk about this figure of 80% of projects fail to meet the objectives or benefits that are supposed to provide the outcomes. Well, I can honestly say if you start to employ active listening, it can work. Maybe I've already spoken about this, but it's this dramatic increase in productivity and acceptance of change. If you feel part of it, you're motivated. If you're motivated, things will happen. But everybody has to be motivated. They mustn't be driven by the stick. They must be encouraged to take an active part and contribute. The people who will drive this are the servant leaders. And we've encouraged, when we go into these organizations, we try to explain what a servant leader is. We do train people in servant leadership. Basically, to be a servant, you need to have the 3 skills there of listening, empathy, healing. In other words, you listen to somebody, you empathize with them, and if there's a mistake, you help to heal that mistake. You don't beat them over the head. You actually say to them, look, okay, if you've got a problem, come to us, and as a team, we'll sort it out. And those project teams that when a problem arises, they come together as a team to resolve it, always do far much better. On the leadership element of that servant leadership, the leader needs to have awareness. He needs to know what's going on. And he can only do that by listening properly. He needs to be able to persuade other people. He needs to have the ability to persuade other people. And he'll only do that if other people are prepared to listen to him. Conceptualization, he needs to be able to explain things. He needs to be able to take somebody's idea, which might sound very complex, break it down and put it across simply. The last thing, a good leader needs foresight. He needs to see what's coming down the road, whether it be a risk, an opportunity. We've just gone through the biggest thing, which most businesses never foresaw, which was this pandemic. What was interesting was that those that had been knowledgeable, had read that there may be something coming along, had started to put things in place. They had increased their stock levels or whatever. But you combine those two servant and leadership, you start to get a stewardship. And that stewardship is about a commitment to other people around you. And it's a commitment to building a community. Now, what is important is everybody in the organization needs to be a servant leader, not just the project manager, not just the exec, not the chief exec. Everybody in the organization needs to have the ability to become a servant leader. And they can start by doing that, by listening. Okay, so come back to what the Agile Listening Project's all about. It's about promoting listening skills. I've only touched about those. I've gone through the 5 basic skills. There's lots of other things we teach. We teach people how to clear their minds before a meeting so that they can absorb information better. We take them through exercises in teams that might help them all learn. Well, for instance, the old trick of giving somebody a stick and you can only speak when you've got the stick. And, until that person relinquishes the stick, nobody can speak. And if you want to speak, you put your hand up and the stick gets passed to you. But there's other things we also do. We teach people how to improvise. We do improv type examples to help people understand. So that's how we promote listening skills. There's a Agile Listening group website where we're starting to post videos with tips. We're encouraging people from outside the business transformation, project management world to come and do interviews. We've got one with a brain surgeon coming up, and he's going to tell us how he was trained to listen to people, because quite often he's only got 15, 20 minutes to listen to somebody and make some form of diagnosis. We have a ex-police constable, chief inspector, in fact, which is quite interesting in today's times where we feel as though the police don't listen, when Black Lives Matter and other things where we maybe see institutional racism or whatever. But policemen are being trained in active listening, how well it's actually being used. But they do use it when they come to interview people in murder cases and other cases. And this chief constable I've been talking about has been teaching us about how they were taught to listen. And the other example is when there's a hijacking situation, how they deal with that. So interesting things there. And lastly, we got school teachers who, I don't know if you're aware, are all trained these days as part of their PGC in a thing called dual coding. Dual coding is about teaching communication methods to help kids absorb more information and and get them to ask more questions so that they can make sure they understand what the teacher is actually saying. So we got those series of interviews being developed at the moment. One's actually in production at the moment. The tips, But more importantly, we've actually got a community of people now that are actually starting to share ideas. The LinkedIn page has only been up for 1.5 weeks. 76 people have joined. There's representatives from every single continent. Seems to be a lot of people from South Africa. Unfortunately, fortunately, I was able to spend 13 years working, so a lot of people know me out there for the project management work I did out there. But there's people from Dubai, there's people from China, there's people from Australia, people from New Zealand, the States. It's a great mix, and they all bring their own ideas and are sharing them. So I'd encourage everybody, please, to on the last page, you'll find I've got the Agile Listening Project link to the group. I'd encourage everybody to join, and please contribute. What we're also trying to, the whole idea is actually we're trying to demonstrate that listening skills can be learned and we can improve them. And by improving them, we really hope that we can get the psychological well-being of team members right. We see far too many people stressed out there. We see people, unfortunately, I've seen far too many instances where I've walked into rooms where people are actually crying. They're bullied by project managers that go around dictating to people because they know it all, they've done it all, they've had more dinners than everybody, rather than saying, what can we do as a team? And, basically, we're trying to demonstrate to people at the top that they need to take some of their budget and spend it on training people in active listening skills. And what we try and do is we're encouraging those business transformation managers, those HR directors, that they need to bring us in prior to the start of a major project, so that we can talk to all the stakeholders, all the project members, all the senior execs, and get them to buy into the fact that people need training. And by doing that, the project has a higher chance of succeeding. So, yeah, I'm very lucky that throughout this I've had a sponsor, a company called Broadlight Global. They're a company based in Hove, near Brighton. They have been known for many years of being a sort of a DevOps team, but I've joined Antiva into it, and a couple of other companies have come together to form Broadlight Global to be able to offer the full range of project management skills from business transformation managers, program managers, project managers, business analysts, DevOps people, agile coaches and mentors. We're trying to offer the full gamut by bringing those companies together. And currently, we've developed an Agile listening course, which takes 1 day. We will be posting dates for these for people to come from as individuals, but we do them for companies. We do them online. We do them in the classroom. I think we'd all prefer to do them in the classroom, but that's not so possible at the moment. And obviously, we do the agenda shift courses as well. And Mike Rodenko, my colleague, does the servant leadership courses. He's ex-military, and he certainly brings a bright light to everything. So, when you get the slides, you'll be able to click up here, and that will take you to the Agile Listening Project group page. Please join up. Love to have you. Love to be able to share ideas with you, and you share your ideas with us. If you want to contact us, there's our addresses and everything like that. And really, what I'm left to say is, I'm an Agile listener. I've actually got a badge to prove it. I'm more than happy to send people an active listening badge. But what we want to say is, you can be too. Come and join us. And thank you very much for listening, folks.
Thank you. Well, they have a virtual clap, and thank you very much, Andrew. Thanks for sharing that. Oh, I've got some mean questions to ask and some interesting questions as well. Any other questions or comments that people would make, first of all?
Oh, just a comment that I mean, my experience with people in positions of leadership is that if they haven't learned it already, it is very hard to teach.
It's interesting you say that. Teaching an old dog new tricks. I'm not sure if you realise how old I am. I'm 59. And some years ago, I was actually accused of not being a very good listener, mainly because I'm partially deaf. But somebody came up to me and they said to me, "Will you please let people finish?" And Stephen knows me quite well. He has kicked me before and said, "Andrew, listen, don't speak." And that's sometimes because I don't hear. But I think you can teach an old dog new tricks. But what's interesting is I'm finding a lot of the managers, senior managers and execs, it's an ego thing.
Yes.
And if you can demonstrate to them that actually their egos could be far better massaged if they were loved by people.
Which is what we all want.
Well,
and life can be so much simpler and less stressful.
I mean,
they can learn.
So actually, I've got a question just really quickly, and Andrea follow up afterwards, but who's this aimed for? So I guess the implication was that this is for the macho executives at the top who don't have time to listen, and they're in the habit, they believe their job is to step into the room, tell people what to do, and then they can step it out to the room to set fire to the next room. And also you're talking about South Africa. I imagine that's perhaps a macho culture in Australia. So that kind of cultural environment it's
a bit more than that. You actually find there's usually quite often dominant people saying within the DevOps team you'll find somebody that's dominant. You might find one of the stakeholders that's very dominant. It's actually teaching the other people good tricks on how to actually put them in their thoughts. One of the things we are doing by issuing these badges and getting people to wear them in meetings, somebody says, "Well, what's that Agile? I'm an Agile listening badge," and they can explain it and say, "Well, I'm wearing it because I actually feel as though nobody listens to me. Can we please try doing X, Y, and Z?" I've given about 20 of these out on my last trip to Africa, where there's what we call a club mentality. Club mentality is if you get something wrong, somebody gives you a clip around the ear, and instead of saying, "Okay, how can we help to sort it?" they sack them. And that was the standard way of doing things at Standard Bank for a while, I can assure you. As it was in Absa, Nedbank. We've managed to change that. And we've also managed to get HR people to understand that when they're doing recruiting, when they're doing the resourcing for these things, and every major business transformation has a resourcing manager, they need to look for people with servant leadership attributes, rather than people that are going to come in and try and impose their views on the thing. But we want people, we don't want imposers, we want people that are listeners.
Andrew, were you going to come back on that?
Well, just on that very last comment, there's a guy in England who, when he does his interviewing, he's a clean trained business owner. And when he does the interviewing, he gives the clean questions. He sort of trains them up in a few minutes as to how to use them. And he notices whether they're receptive and able to use them in the moment during the interview. So whether they've not been able to or not, showing that they can learn during the interview is actually a quite clever trick.
What a clever idea. That's brilliant. Sorry, I'm just scribbling that down, Andrea, because it's such a great idea.
Yeah.
I know what happened to the people who don't.
But Andrea, can you get onto that group page?
Yeah,
and tell people about that idea, because it is brilliant.
Sure.
Do you know what that reminds me of? a stage hypnotist where they get 10 people out and they're trying to hypnotize them. The ones who just won't be part of the act, they just say, yeah, okay, sorry, go back to your seat. But and that's not, I guess, in a derogatory way, but it's understanding the people who can be part of your
well, and
effort.
the person who trained this business owner actually uses similar techniques in scoping out new projects that, so, and I'm thinking in the Agile space, when we go into consult, we had better know in advance that the company leaders can update their mental models in the moment. And we can only do that prior to the contract in order to not get ourselves mired into a situation that it won't be compatible. So I'm not saying everybody can do this. It's a highly elevated skill to be able to take a half an hour of a time to interview somebody about what's going on in their organization and to figure out if, first of all, are you talking to the right person? Are they listening and responding and able to get an aha moment from that 30 minutes that lets you know that they're not only listening, but able to take on a new way of thinking in the moment. So it's a little different from listening, but it's still a key thing for, it's also at that edge of entering into an agreement, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. What I like about this idea that you're coming up with is that one of the things we do, as you know, as agenda shift coaches, is we often do a survey before we go in. And actually, when you go through that agenda shift survey, a lot of things we've been talking about this evening come out. And it's a good way of taking that survey back to the people you're engaging with and saying, these are the areas we need to concentrate on. And nearly every single time, one of the things I would come back with is say, we need to concentrate on active listening and servant leadership. Whether I do the survey or not, it always comes out.
Right. So that's what my question is about. But let's any other questions from anybody else, because we've come to the last few seconds of the session.
I do have something very quick.
Go ahead.
Could everyone but Andrew just mute, please, just for a second, and then Andrew, can you talk?
Okay, can you hear me?
Thanks. Go ahead, please, Andrew.
So, okay, that was the question. Amy, you'll have to tell me what the technical problem is afterwards. It might be my fault, or maybe somebody else.
There's through the whole thing, there was this high pitched ringing, which made listening very difficult, and it was quite ironic.
Yeah, I heard a little chirping, but because I'm old and slightly deaf, it didn't. Yeah, that's the advantage to my old age.
I think it might be.
Is it a fan noise?
It could be. It's very regular. It does. It could. If you got an oscillating fan going or something.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the fan in my laptop, most probably. So thank you for pointing it out.
That's all right, because
it needs a new fan.
Yes, it was making it very difficult to pay attention because I could just hear the rattling.
Right,
but the content was good.
Andrew has heard that.
I'll take that on board. I'm going to get a new fan tomorrow. Amazon. Yeah.
So listen, I'm not going to end the Zoom session, so people can stick around for a few more minutes if they want to. But we have come to the end of the 2-hour time box, so nobody should feel bad about leaving. Thank you all very much for coming, for sharing your ideas, and it's been a really good crowd. Thanks again to Josh and to Andrew for sharing their content. And I have to say that the Agile Listening Project sounds very exciting, but particularly that program of events that you were talking about. So is there a way for us to see those events? You were talking about a doctor who has 15 minutes to interview somebody and understand what's at the root of their problem and other cases like that. Is there a way that we can become part of that
Yeah,
program?
if everybody connects to me on LinkedIn, that's where I will be posting the adverts to say when they're going to be on.
Awesome.
And by the way, these live, some of them will be live LinkedIn presentations, so people can ask questions. It's not just going to be a video. It's going to be interactive. Certainly the brain surgeon, when you hear him, he's just an incredible bloke. Absolutely amazing. He actually goes and lectures to senior executives around the world. And he's a brain surgeon. That's what he does for a day-to-day
That's his
living.
job. That's his day job.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you spoke about updating our mental models, and I think my own mental models have been updated with Black Lives Matter and other things. So I noticed, Josh, you used a lot of he whenever you spoke about somebody, and I'd in the past used guys as a general gender neutral term, but I know that guys is not gender neutral, guys is men as well. So to be more inclusive, maybe we can talk about different gender pronouns and throw them into the sessions as well. But yeah, there you go. It's a mental model to be updated. Right, this is just social now. So anyone who's interested in hanging around and just having a chat, I can. If anyone just wants to talk to with any other single person, I can make a special breakout room for you. But anyway, thanks again.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been marvelous.
And any comments on the running of the session, the content that we had, things that you'd like to talk about in the future, pop it in the chat, leave it on the meetup group. We'd love to hear.
Hi, it's Jonathan. This is my first Agile South Coast.
Welcome.
It's been really enjoyable. It's nice to sort of be involved in.
Are you recording this?
Yes, we have recorded this, and that's one of the mistakes I made at the beginning. I did not tell everyone that this was being recorded. I also have last month's session recorded, and it's not published anywhere, but I'm hoping in the next few days we find a place to publish these. Are you happy with that?
It's amazing how that works. I run a meetup as well, and they're slow burners. They get regular visitors month after month after month.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to ask Josh to repeat the first 30 seconds of his, and we'll throw that at the beginning. But we do have Josh's, and we've got Andrew's as well. So Josh and Andrew, if you give me your permission, I'll share those. And maybe I'll just share some content as well, because as an exercise during Josh's session, I used as an example the battle was to run a well-organized meetup. So there we've got the battle map for making organisation of Agile South Coast events even better. So I don't know if that popped up on the shared content, but anyway, so that's something we're thinking about. What meetup are you running?
I run one off my business. I do data warehousing. I've got a very good network, so I've got some well-known individuals in the community that turn up. Mm-hmm. So at my last one, I had, if you've ever heard of him, a guy called Bill Inmon turn up.
I have. Did he write the book?
Grandfather of data warehousing. He did a 15-minute session as part of it. He had over 100 people in. And already for the next event, we've got more than 40 people registered, which isn't until September yet.
Now, I'm just going to embarrass myself because it doesn't matter anymore. It's so far away from my professional day-to-day life. Is he the fourth normal? Is he the fourth normal form guy?
No.
No, okay.
He's very instrumental in architecting right. Solutions to analytics.
Right.
So he's based out in Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's good. And I try to reach out and get authors in and people who have got things to say, and it seems to act as an attraction.
So has your meetup always been virtual, or do people travel?
No, we used to do London-based stuff, and we get 20 people rolling in on a rainy night in a pub upstairs somewhere. And it just wasn't going anywhere. We're getting the same people turning up regularly. And then just going virtual has made a huge difference to the audience that turns up and the engagement we're getting.
It's really interesting because at Agile South Coast we were talking about transformative ideas, and we were saying, what's the purpose of the group? Why do we come to this room to meet every month? Maybe we should be a virtual event, and that was a big joke. And then a month later, it was the only choice. So,
I'm not sure. Andrea, you're not South Coast UK, are you?
Not at all. I love coming to visit, though. I wish I could.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. You can be virtually a member of the group, but maybe not necessarily be physically located in the same area. So yeah, it opens up to the world really, and there are only certain time slots in a day which work for different time zones. So I had a guest presenter from Australia a couple of months ago. We had to run that much earlier in the day just to get the time overlap working.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
So
very cool.
people were joining from the States at 7 or 8 in the morning to catch the guy in Australia.
Well, it's good to have you with us today because obviously there's suddenly far more events for people to choose from, aren't there?
Yeah. I was interested. I was looking along the south coast to see what's running down here, and you're one of the bigger ones, so it's good to see these things running.
Can I quote you on that?
Yeah, you can put me in that one. I'm not sure it'll help you, but
have you been to Lean Agile Brighton with Carl Scotland? I'd recommend.
No, I haven't been there. No. I usually do FinTech London.
Right. Okay. I would point my finger at Carl's Lean Agile Brighton as the big one on the south coast, but obviously we aim to rival that.
FinTech London's for the bearded men with bicycles. So yeah, vegetarians.
And Neil, if I can encourage you, Broadlight obviously run the DevOps bunkers in London and Brighton. I don't know if you've been to those.
No, I haven't. No.
We get about 150 to 200 people.
That's really good. Yeah. My area is more of a niche, so I don't expect to have a massive amount turnout. I was really impressed with the last lot, but
well done.
Yeah, those are really good topics to address. Loads of people trying to learn about Agile at the moment.
Can I suggest one thing? Can I just say one thing? We're going through Brexit. We're going through Brexit, and one of the things I've been really encouraged to do is to talk to our Commonwealth countries. I did a presentation to 2,000 people from India the other day. We can actually make an impact into the level of business that's going to be happening between countries other than Europe, whether it be the US, South Africa, India, you name it. And we've got to actively sort of start to share ideas across those countries.
So just on the flip side of that, I know Andrea from another community, and we're kind of involved in regular conversations, and I said, I think it was for last month, I thought, we've only got 15 people coming to Agile South Coast this month. And Andrea said, well, why is that bad? Because you'll be able to talk to each other. So while it's nice to be prestigious and big, that there is something that I do try to preserve in Agile South Coast, which is just the ability for small groups of people to chat. So we integrated that in Josh's session and the breakout rooms this month. And it is difficult because while it is great to be able to communicate with 2,000 people, you feel like you may be spreading yourself thin, kind of this raspberry jam idea, it's too thin to make a difference. Whereas there is value in these smaller groups as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
And Jonathan,
making a difference.
Yeah. And making connections with people as well, so we can help each other make a difference. Jonathan, you said this is your first session. Where are you coming from?
Where am I coming from? To try and bore you with a little bit of life story. So I was a contractor.
What brought you here?
So I was a contractor working with a team with Pavel, and he's a bit of a rock star in this sort of world. And I got a new gig, and my employer said to me, "Hey, why don't you put a Scrum Master hat on and start doing that? And PS, get Jira updated." So I'm trying to. I know being a Scrum Master is more than just Jira. So I want to learn a little bit more while I try this hat on for size, and we'll see how we get on.
Well, I think that's a noble path you tread. I think I kind of it reminds me of where I started as well. Andrew, I don't know if you were about to make a comment on that.
No, I'm in the latter part of my career. I mean, Andrew said earlier, you don't know my age. I'm 59 or whatever. I'm 57. So when I hear people like Jonathan who are in the sort of the thick soup of, figuring out their career and maybe switching paths, it makes me realize that I do still have things to offer to people who are younger in their careers. And I sometimes forget that. And I don't know what that is specifically, and of course I'm assuming a lot about Jonathan and what he's doing, but change is inherent in this industry. Yep. And whether you stay down the technical path and go down that path, which is scary for some, or you start doing Scrum Mastery and Agile coaching, it's a different path. And how do you come to make that decision? Are you just put into it, or do you decide on it?
It is. Sorry to interject.
No, go ahead.
It is tricky because I sort of focused really hard on a technical thing, and I am doing a highly technical role, in a sort of big project, and there's eyes looking at me to deliver this good stuff. But then they say, "Oh, try the Scrum Master hat on and see how you get on." Then it's kind of, "Oh, you try doing some leadership stuff." Oh, hang on, guys, you're not paying me for all of this, but okay. Yeah.
Leadership at every level. So I think I'd always look to expect leadership throughout my organisation. Yep. I'd look to promote that. I know Nigel might have some great advice on just this starting point that you're in now, because Nigel, are you still with Clear Vision, the world's greatest Jira consultancy?
Yeah, so we did talk earlier. I did describe myself as a Jira admin, which I am sometimes still as well. Getting started, I still feel like I'm a starter with Agile, even after doing it for quite a few years. It's a tough job, but it's very rewarding.
Yep.
It can be a little thankless at times, because it's the team that take all the credit. But if you deliver well, if you get the team motivated and they start to perform well, they come together as a team, they start working in the direction, it's a fantastic feeling and you'll love it.
It is. Yeah, thank you.
I think the good thing to realise here, Jonathan, is you're being asked to do this, so there must be potential in you.
Yeah.
One way of looking at that. So
thank you.
There's a double-edged sword.
Just in a bad way, I start giving you a chance.
I agree with Stephen about double-edged sword. What were you going to say, Stephen, about that?
Well, it's a double-edged sword in that it's a role that doesn't have clearly defined boundaries. So I used to rail against that. Please just tell me what you want me to do. But then as soon as somebody defines my role, I feel very hemmed in, and I don't want this job. So embrace the fuzziness and make the job what you need it to be.
Set your boundaries. I mean, I think it's very hard to say no at some stages of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say no. That felt like it was not a non-option.
And the whole keeping Jira thing up to date. Now, that's not where you want to end your you don't want that to become what a Scrum Master means in your organisation. But then there's value in understanding what it means to be keeping Jira up to date. So again, that's going to be a tricky balancing act for you as well.
I describe it with the as that is the window in which we are viewed.
Oh, I'd like to comment on that one because that is my area. Transparency is absolutely important.
Yep.
And having that visibility and honesty. But as a Scrum Master, I think your duty is to explain to the team why it's important and why they need to keep things up to date for themselves.
Yes.
Not you up to date.
As someone who was a junior Scrum Master at the start of 2017, I can tell you one of the best things you can do is quite simply join groups like this, because you'll just learn so much more about how you can do it. I mean, like, that's how I kind of talking with Stephen, when I was running with my team, it was a digital team. I kind of got thrown in the deep end and was like, right, you're working with this team. They're already working Kanban. I'm like, that's cool. What's that? And just went with it. But then by going and talking with people like Steve and people just around and kind of reading and getting recommendations, it starts to make sense. And then I'd say that's kind of the big key thing is just find a community that you can get the support with if you're not finding it within your company. Because then they'll kind of say, oh, try this, and then you try it, and then the company then back up and go, wait, they're not allowed to fail, and it's like, well, it's kind of what this agile stuff you've been telling them to do anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. I did sort of roll out a revision to the daily stand-up questions, which were well received. I don't know if it's a thing.
Go on. So what did they used to be, and what are they now?
It was, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what are your blockers? I'm like, I read it on some random article somewhere, and I thought, well, this resonates with me. So we have, what are your blockers? What's distracting you from your number one priority? And are you going to ship on time? I look after some devs.
So let me think. Has anyone got any comments on those questions?
Yeah, that'd be good.
I've got one.
I like how you start with the blocker. I like because it's a good thing you can go in with right. What's happened today? But then obviously that could start with the negative attitude. But at the same time, if you're getting blocked, that's pretty good. And I think actually saying what's the number one priority, so long as it sounds like everyone knows what their number one priority is or whatever they're achieving.
That was my comment.
Good.
So your second one, could you say your second question again?
Of course, yeah. It's verbatim. What is distracting you from your number one priority?
So I would tweak that to what is distracting you from our number one priority.
Ooh, thank you.
That's where I'd go with that one.
Changed. Thank you.
And what was your third one?
Will you be able to ship on time, e.g. complete your stories within the sprint?
So again, I would just change the individual pronouns to the group, the team.
Okay.
Will we be able to ship on time?
Also,
this
go
is
on,
a
Emma.
bit like the Hawthorne effect. If you just change them from time to time, it just shows you're paying attention.
So you're testing me now, Neil. So the Hawthorne effect is just because people think that they're being watched, they suddenly start performing better. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So they
did the experiments with turning lights up and then turning lights down in an organization. Turning lights up had an effect on productivity. Then it stayed still for a while and productivity died off. Then they turned the lights down and the productivity went up again.
And they sent people
really
in
showing
with...
show you paying attention by varying things.
Yeah, I agree with that. It gets stale, whichever questions you use.
Yep.
But just those little tweaks that I would make would just accentuate the fact that we're trying to work together towards something, and that might prompt somebody to ask you a difficult question, which is, so what is our priority then?
That should be commonly available on the sprint goals conflict.
Yeah, what I was going to jump in with is rather than saying what's our number one priority, because you might have two different people thinking, well, I think this ticket's more important than that ticket. If you change that to our sprint goal, you're bringing it back to the deliverable rather than the individual ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you're making that more concrete. So the thing that we agreed together.
Jonathan, if you send me your details, I'll send you one of these badges to wear in one of your sessions.
All of your sessions.
And then you can explain to people why you're wearing it.
Thank you. I'm a fully remote worker, but yes.
I was going to say, if people have to log into Jira to see the sprint goal, then they haven't listened to what the sprint goal was from a So that's an interesting experiment too. Can they each? I mean, I wouldn't do this necessarily, but can they each say what the goal is a few days into the sprint?
I like to bully my team with that. I love bullying them with that. It's like a random day in the week. I just go, and how are we going towards the sprint goal, guys? And they're like, And I'm like, well, what is it? Someone tell me. You talked me through what it was going to be, and they're like, oh yeah, it's to do this. And someone like the product owner or someone who's actually been paying attention, like, oh yeah, how are we doing that? Because they're like, yeah, we're really doing really well with it. It's like, okay.
That's why nobody likes you, Josh.
I know, it's great.
That's the life of a Scrum Master.
It's a bit of a top-down approach to the sprint goals. It's a very firm deadline, and a bit of, do more with less almost. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody once described it as a poison chalice, but I think that's a rather negative outlook.
What did they describe as a poison chalice?
Being in this position, I think that says more about them than it does the role or me. I think I've got an opportunity to make change. Yeah, I've got an opportunity to make changes. I've got an opportunity to help rally up the team and make sure that we're doing our best to deliver what needs to be delivered.
A really strong position of influence, and it really tests your ability to influence without hierarchical power, I think.
And to that, whatever you do with any leadership job ever, if you have to use your hierarchical power, you've lost the argument. Any level of leadership is all about persuasion and getting people to do what you want. So your servant leadership in a Scrum Master is the ultimate learning ground for that.
I'm really, really pleased to hear that. It's music to my ears, because one of my team said, "Oh, you don't really have the power to say, you boy, go and do that thing." And I said, "Well, I don't want to say that either. I don't. But I also want to know that, if it, I use random analogies, but if it was boat rowing, I don't know, rowing, I think it's called, not just boat rowing, but we've all got to do this. We've all got to do it efficiently, so we all do our little bit to make that boat go as fast as we can, or something."
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the quip is, for me, I can't change your mind. You can't change somebody else's mind. So you can't. You can tell somebody to do something, but actually, what we want people to be is committed towards delivering that sprint goal.
Yeah.
Assuming you're lucky enough to be able to construct a clear sprint goal. So that's the job, to work with the product owner, because I assume you're not the product owner as well, and help them create that clear, compelling vision.
Yeah. Thank you.
God, how exciting, Jonathan!
It is. It's good. I'm pretty happy.
Good.
Jonathan, another tip. When I first started being a Scrum Master, I was a manager before that, and people felt like the people were reporting to me during the sprint, it's the stand-up, and it was like a status report. Just make sure that it doesn't happen to your team. Make sure that they're talking to each other, not to you. Your appearance is purely incidental. You don't need to be there. In fact, if you want to, don't turn up one morning and see what happens. Because it should go ahead without you.
Make sure you're clearly doing something else important.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But you don't need to be there. You in fact, as a Scrum Master, you're trying to do yourself out of a job all the time, as much as you possibly can. Back to the Jira, keeping Jira updated. It's the team's responsibility. You're just there to make sure they do sometimes.
I've even let my Jira go into absolute disarray, and then watch as the at the time it was the project manager as well as the head of digital came down on my team, and I said, well, it's not my job to make sure that everything's kind of moving across there. We've got a physical board where I've got the work moving on there. Jira, they just don't see any value in it, and I was like, I really want them to use it, because then I can get metrics out of it that I can do it. And they're like, well, that's what we want from it. We want to know what they're doing, where the times are. I'm like, well, you don't need to see the time. But then what actually happened was I simply said to the team, wouldn't it just be really useful for you to kind of just move it across and just put in the information, because you keep telling me that so-and-so hasn't done this and done that in the team, and you can't be bothered to turn your chair 45 degrees to talk to them. Just put it in a comment. I showed them the comment feature, and they're like, oh, I didn't know this was here. I was like, we've been using it 6 months. How do you not know that there's a comment feature?
The tool has to be useful to the people who you're asking to use it, doesn't it? You don't want to be imposing just overhead and admin on them.
My sense is it's viewed as an administrative overhead that gets in the way of development.
So there's two things. I mean, if the managers start to talk about the metrics that come from Jira as some kind of measure of the team, then the team will want to present the best picture. So you would hope they would keep it up to date. But as Josh said, it's helpful in our work, because I can see when I'm about to need to test something, and I can have a conversation about technical details, and I can go back and find that record easily. So yeah, there's value.
Yeah. And especially now we're all remote.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good luck with your whiteboards
Yeah.
and your sticky notes now.
Well,
It's
are we not
fantastic-
still are we not just employing a board buddy to live by the board and move stuff around? No. So
I must admit, Jira is a fantastic way for when your tester's really grumpy and you kind of just in the daily stand-up you've got the board there and you quietly hover your mouse over the 5 items in test and the 3 things in development. You go, I wonder why our sole tester is feeling a bit grumpy today. You just quietly hover over it and circle it and just see if anyone notices, and that will give you a gauge of are they actually using the tool and actually paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, that's that shared visualization. Is that busy person in the team who struggles to articulate to everyone why it is that they're so busy, when all I've asked you to do is test this little thing, to be able to say, yeah, and here are the 6 other little things that require 4 hours of setup. So Jonathan, I'm sure we're just going off on our own pet peeves here, but you'll find your own.
It's really
rocky
interesting
road.
to hear the context of the roles that you guys people have, not just guys, is it?
Guys and gals.
That's it.
You'll find that Scrum Masters all suffer together. I think what was it, Stephen, we said this place is it's like Scrum Master kind of retreat.
It's a support group, yeah.
Anonymous, yeah.
Support group, that's it, yeah.
It was great meeting you all.
Yeah, so that's it. So let's close our bar.
Thank you so much for your time,
Pleasure to meet
Josh.
you.
It is really appreciated.